I always thought my life would follow a simple, perfect script: meet the right person, fall in love, get engaged, and walk down the aisle in a white dress, surrounded by friends and family, ready to start forever. That was the dream I held close to my heart since I was a little girl. I imagined the excitement, the laughter, the happy tears. I imagined feeling beautiful and loved. But as I learned the hard way, sometimes life throws a curveball that shatters everything you thought you knew. My fiance's name was Ryan. Handsome. Charming, with that easy smile that made you believe he was trustworthy and kind. We met 3 years ago at a friend's birthday party. I remember the way he looked at me, like I was the only person in the room, like he had been waiting for me all his life. I thought I'd finally found my person. Our relationship moved fast but felt natural. From the very first date, I knew Ryan was different. We shared dreams, fears, and endless late-night talks about the future. Within a year, he proposed to me on a quiet beach during a sunset that seemed almost magical. I said yes without hesitation. That moment was everything I had ever wanted, but soon after the engagement, things began to feel off. At first, it was little things: Ryan canceling plans last minute, getting distracted when I spoke about wedding details, avoiding certain topics. I brushed it off as pre-wedding jitters. I told myself that planning a wedding was stressful and that he needed time to adjust, but the cracks started to grow. His family, who at first seemed welcoming and warm, began to act strangely around me. His mother's polite smiles felt forced. His father barely acknowledged my presence, and his sister avoided eye contact. The once lively group dinners turned cold and distant. I tried to stay positive, thinking it was just nerves or misunderstandings. Then came the secretive phone calls. Ryan would step outside or disappear to the bathroom to take calls, always looking tense afterward. I never asked who was on the other end because I didn't want to seem insecure, but the doubt started creeping in. The most painful part was Ryan himself becoming distant. The man who used to listen intently to every word now seemed distracted, irritable. He stopped sharing his dreams with me, and our conversations became shallow, superficial. It was as if the love we built was slipping through my fingers, but I clung to it desperately, hoping it was just a phase. I started noticing how his eyes would occasionally flicker with guilt when I caught him staring off. His apologies became routine but hollow. Something was wrong, and I was too afraid to ask the right questions. Despite all this, I kept planning. I chose the venue, the dress, the flowers, the music. Every detail was a labor of love, and I imagined walking down that aisle with him, promising forever. My heart ached with the hope that everything would be okay. My best friend, Emily, noticed my growing anxiety. "Kim, are you sure Ryan's really the one? You seem worried." "I don't know," I admitted one night over coffee. "I want to believe in us, but sometimes I feel like I'm holding on to a ghost." She squeezed my hand. "Trust your instincts." But I was too in love to listen. 2 weeks before the wedding, I confronted Ryan gently. "Is there something you're not telling me?" He looked at me, eyes heavy with something I couldn't place: shame? Fear? "I just want everything to be perfect," he said, avoiding my gaze, but perfection felt like a lie. The night before the wedding, I barely slept. I kept replaying moments, looking for signs, clues I might have missed. My heart pounded with a mix of excitement and dread. I told myself tomorrow would be the start of the rest of my life. No matter what happened, I was ready to say, "I do." But little did I know, I was about to wake up from the dream I thought was real, and the nightmare would begin the moment I stepped into that church. The morning of the wedding arrived with a strange weight in my chest. I woke up early, hoping to shake off the uneasy feeling that had been growing inside me for weeks. The sun poured through the window, soft and warm, but all I could think about was the day ahead. The day I had dreamed of my entire life now. Tangled with uncertainty. As I sat in the quiet room, getting my hair and makeup done, my phone buzzed repeatedly. It was Ryan, but every time I tried to call him back, he didn't answer. When I finally reached him, his voice was distant, almost cold. "I'm just busy," he said shortly, then hung up. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat and told myself it was nothing. Weddings were hectic, after all. But deep down, the knot of worry tightened. The hours passed in a blur of excitement and nerves. My bridesmaids surrounded me, helping with my dress and calming my trembling hands. They tried to keep the mood light, but I could see the concern in their eyes too. At one point, Emily pulled me aside. "Kim, are you sure about this? I mean, everything with Ryan, it doesn't feel right." I smiled weakly. "I have to believe it will be." But that hope was fragile. When it was time to leave for the church, Ryan finally showed up. He looked handsome, wearing the tuxedo we had chosen. Together, but his eyes were tired. He barely smiled, barely spoke. I tried to catch his gaze to remind him that we were in this together. But he looked past me as if I was invisible. At the church, the guests began to fill the pews. The air buzzed with anticipation. The orchestra tuned their instruments, and I felt a flicker of the joy I had been missing all day. I told myself, this is it. Then came the moment my father took my arm and walked me down the aisle. My heart pounded as I scanned the faces of our friends and family, searching for Ryan. He stood at the altar, waiting for me. Or so I thought. He was standing next to a woman I had never seen before, dressed in white, holding a bouquet. Her. Eyes shining with nervous excitement. My stomach twisted. "Ryan?" I whispered, voice trembling. He didn't respond. Instead, the woman smiled at the crowd, her lips curved in a victorious grin. Confusion and panic flooded through me. Had I been mistaken? Was this some cruel joke? The priest began the ceremony, and I was frozen, unable to move or speak. Everyone looked at me, the bride, but I was no longer the bride in their eyes. I was a ghost, an intruder. I tried to understand what was happening. Why was Ryan standing there with this woman? Who was she? How could this be real? I glanced at Ryan's face, searching for any hint of explanation, but all I saw was cold detachment. No recognition, no apology. My mind screamed in disbelief. It wasn't just a wedding day gone wrong. It was a betrayal on a scale I never thought possible. The whispers started immediately among the guests. Some were shocked, others confused. I could hear snide remarks and shocked gasps. I wanted to disappear, but I had to face the truth. Ryan had switched me at the altar. The church seemed to spin around me, as if the world had flipped upside down and left me stranded in a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I stood frozen, heart pounding so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. The woman beside Ryan, the bride now, smiled wide and calm, the exact opposite of how I felt. My legs felt weak, my breath shallow. I tried to speak, but my voice was gone. My mind raced for answers, for some clue that this was all a horrible misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The priest cleared his throat awkwardly, glancing between Ryan, the other woman, and me, clearly unsure of how to proceed. The guests whispered louder now, their eyes flicking back and forth. Some stared at me with pity, others with disbelief, and a few with judgment. I could feel my father's steady hand tighten on my arm, a silent attempt to keep me grounded. But inside, I was breaking. Ryan looked at me once, and I thought maybe there would be an explanation, an apology, anything. But his eyes were cold, distant, like he was someone I'd never known. Then, without a word, he turned back to the other woman. It felt like a slap. I stepped back, my dress suddenly heavy and suffocating. The place that had once felt like the start of my dream had turned into a stage for my worst humiliation. Some guests started to whisper rumors, as if the whole ceremony was some elaborate drama. I wanted to scream, to tell them everything, but what could I say? How could I explain being replaced at the altar by the man I trusted most? The tears I had been holding back finally fell. I wiped them away quickly, unwilling to give them. The satisfaction of seeing me break completely. Suddenly, the doors of the church burst open and Emily rushed in, eyes wide with shock. She came straight to my side and took my hand. "This isn't right," she whispered fiercely. "You don't have to stand here." For a moment, I wanted to run, to escape the whispers, the stares, the betrayal. But I stayed. I had to face it, even if it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. After what felt like an eternity, I turned toward the crowd. "I'm not the bride anymore," I said, my voice steady but shaking. "But I'm not going anywhere." A hush fell over the room. People looked at me as if I'd just declared war. Ryan's new bride frowned and whispered something to him. He said nothing, eyes fixed on me with a flicker of something I couldn't identify. I didn't care anymore. The person I thought I loved had just broken me, but I wasn't broken yet. Not completely. The ceremony ended without me walking down the aisle. Instead, I left the church with Emily by my side, the whispers following me like shadows. Outside, the cool air hit my face, and I finally let the tears fall freely. My dream was shattered. My trust betrayed, but something inside me sparked. A fierce determination that I wouldn't let this be the end of my story. I wasn't going to be the woman who stood silently while her life was stolen. I was going to fight and take back everything that was mine. OING, to be the woman who stood silently while her life was stolen. I couldn't believe my eyes. Standing there in the middle of the church, the man I loved, the man I had trusted with my heart, had just introduced another woman as his bride. The woman I didn't even know, dressed in white, radiant and calm, as if this was the day she had been waiting for all. Her life thought my world shattered in an instant. The priest's voice wavered as he struggled to keep the ceremony moving forward. The guests were silent, stunned into disbelief. All I could hear was the pounding of my own heart, drowning out everything else. "Ryan?" I whispered, stepping closer, desperate for answers, but he didn't meet my gaze. He seemed almost cold, distant, as if I had become a stranger overnight. The other woman smiled sweetly at the crowd, her eyes gleaming with triumph. I wanted to scream at her, to ask how she could be standing there, pretending to be the bride I was supposed to be, but the words caught in my throat. I felt my father's hand tighten around mine. He whispered, "Stay strong, Kim." But how could I be strong when everything I believed in was crumbling? The church, once filled with hope and joy, now felt like a cage. I was trapped in a nightmare where I was the outsider, the rejected, the betrayed. The whispers among the guests grew louder. Some stared at me with sympathy, others with cold curiosity, and a few with judgment. It was like the whole room was waiting for me to crumble, to run away. But I stood my ground. "Who is she?" I asked Ryan, my voice trembling but loud enough for everyone to hear. He didn't answer. Instead, he took the other woman's hand, as if to show the world that she was the one he wanted. I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, but no words came. Only a burning ache in my chest that felt like it would tear me apart. I realized then that this wasn't just a cruel prank or some misunderstanding. This was a deliberate choice. Ryan had chosen her over me. The pain was unbearable. Tears streamed down my face, but I refused to let them fall silently. I wiped them away roughly, feeling the heat of humiliation in every gaze. The priest finally stopped the ceremony. "Perhaps this is not the right moment," he said awkwardly. I wanted to run out of the church, to disappear from the stairs and whispers. But my feet felt rooted to the floor. I was no longer the bride, but I was still me, and I was done being silent. The church doors closed behind me like a trap snapping shut. I could still hear the murmurs and shocked whispers from inside, but I was outside now, alone with my swirling thoughts and the cold air biting at my skin. The humiliation clung to me like a second skin. I wanted to scream, to cry, to disappear, but none of it felt enough to wash away the betrayal. Every step I took away from the church felt heavier, like I was carrying the weight of 1,000 eyes judging me, condemning me. My phone buzzed nonstop in my purse. Messages from friends, family, even strangers. Some offered comfort, others asked what had happened. I couldn't find the words to explain. How do you tell people your fiancé replaced you with someone else in front of everyone? How do you explain the kind of pain that makes your chest ache and your mind spiral? Emily stayed by my side, a silent shield against the storm. She refused to let me sink into despair. "This isn't your fault," she said softly, her voice steady even when mine wasn't. "You deserve better than this." But all I could see was the wreckage of what should have been the happiest day of my life. Back at home, I sat alone in my room, staring at the untouched wedding dress hanging in the closet. The dress that was supposed to make me shine, to be a symbol of love and hope, now felt like a reminder of everything I lost. The phone rang again. It was my mother. "Kim, are you okay?" she asked, voice trembling. I couldn't stop the tears this time. He switched me," I choked out, "at the altar." "With someone else?" my mother gasped. "Oh, sweetheart." "I don't understand why," I whispered. "Why would he do this? What did I do wrong?" She didn't answer. There was nothing she could say to make it better. I felt broken, humiliated, abandoned, but beneath the pain, a slow, burning anger started to grow. This wasn't just heartbreak. This was betrayal on a level I never imagined. I thought about all the moments he ignored me, the cold looks, the secretive phone calls. It all made sense now. I wasn't just left standing at the altar, I was erased. The people who were supposed to support me looked at me with pity or disbelief. I felt like an outsider in my own life, but as the hours passed, a tiny spark flickered inside me. A spark of defiance. I wouldn't let this define me. I was going to take back everything he stole from me, my dignity, my pride, and my future. I was going to do it on my terms. After the chaos of the wedding day, I didn't know where to go or what to do. The only thing I knew was that I couldn't stay there, not in that house filled with memories and ghosts of what was supposed to be my life. I needed to escape, to breathe, to think. Emily insisted I stay with her, and I gratefully accepted. Her apartment was a sanctuary, a place where I could be myself without the weight of judgment. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to rest. Rest wasn't enough. The pain of betrayal burned like fire inside me. I kept replaying the scene at the altar over and over. How could Ryan do this to me? How could he choose someone else right in front of everyone? I realized then that I couldn't let this humiliation define me. I refused to be the woman who was cast aside, forgotten, erased. That night, I made a decision. I was going to take back everything that was mine. My reputation, my belongings, my life. I wasn't sure how yet, but I knew I couldn't stay silent. Over the next few days, I started gathering what little strength I had left. I contacted a lawyer, hoping to understand my rights. I reached out to close friends who could support me emotionally and, if needed, legally. Ryan's betrayal wasn't just personal, it had financial and legal consequences. We had signed agreements, made joint purchases, and planned a future that now felt like a lie. I remembered the expensive apartment we shared, the jewelry he had given me, the savings we had started together. Were those really mine to lose? I wasn't about to find out the hard way. Emily became my partner in this fight. She helped me organize documents, make calls, and stay focused when the darkness threatened to overwhelm me. It was painful, exhausting, and terrifying. But each step I took reminded me that I was reclaiming my power. I started to rebuild my life piece by piece, determined not to let Ryan's betrayal define who I was. And deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. In the days that followed, I realized something important. I couldn't face this battle alone. Betrayal like mine wasn't just about broken hearts, it was about shattered trust, stolen dreams, and the courage to stand up again. I reached out to people who truly cared. My family wrapped me in love, reminding me of my worth beyond the wedding dress and the broken promises. Friends who had been silent in the background became loud supporters, ready to defend me and help me fight back. But beyond emotional support, I sought strength within myself. I started therapy, pouring my heart out to someone who listened without judgment. It was the first time I allowed myself to feel all the pain without pretending to be okay. Slowly, that pain began to soften. I also began to rediscover my passions and dreams outside of Ryan's shadow. I dusted off old hobbies, picked up new ones, and threw myself into work. I wanted to create a life that was mine, not defined by anyone else's betrayal. Meanwhile, I kept moving forward with the legal battle. With the help of my lawyer, I began to understand my rights and how to reclaim what Ryan had tried to take from me. It was complicated and exhausting, but with every document signed, every phone call made, I felt my power growing. There were days I wanted to give up, when the pain and exhaustion felt unbearable. But Emily's voice in my ear, my family's hugs, and the fire inside me kept me going. I realized that strength isn't just about standing tall, it's about rising every time you fall. Slowly, I began to smile again. Not the forced smile I wore for appearances, but a real one, born from knowing I was taking back control of my life. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. The woman who stood at that altar, betrayed and humiliated, was still here, and she was ready to fight for everything she deserved. By now, I knew this wasn't just about getting back my belongings or my reputation. It was about reclaiming my life and exposing the lies Ryan and that woman had built around him. I began quietly, gathering evidence, listening closely to whispers and rumors. Every secret meeting, every slip of a lie, was a piece of the puzzle I needed. Ryan thought he could erase me without consequences, but he was wrong. I reached out to old acquaintances of his, people who knew the truth behind the charming smile. I found out about his tangled past, the lies he had told, and the promises he had broken, not just to me, but to others. With the help of my lawyer and Emily, I put together a plan to reveal everything. I hired a private investigator to follow Ryan's movements, to document the truth hidden behind his facade. I wanted the world to see who he really was, not the perfect fiancé, but a man who deceived and betrayed. Every step I took was calculated. I wasn't reckless. I was strategic. I posted carefully worded messages on social media, hinting at the truth without naming names. The whispers grew louder. People started questioning Ryan's character. The other woman, his new bride, soon found herself isolated. Rumors followed her, and friends began to distance themselves. Meanwhile, I focused on my legal battle, fighting to regain my assets and clear my name. It wasn't easy. Ryan fought back, trying to silence me, to discredit my claims. But I stood firm. With every court hearing, every confrontation, I felt stronger. The woman who had been cast aside was now the one holding the power. Revenge wasn't just about hurting Ryan, it was about reclaiming my truth and dignity, and I was ready to. When the day the truth finally came to light felt surreal. Months of planning, gathering evidence, and enduring pain all led to this moment. In the courtroom, with all eyes on us, I presented my case with a strength I didn't know I had. The evidence was clear: Ryan's lies, his deceit, and the deliberate betrayal he orchestrated to replace me with someone else. The judge listened carefully, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw justice in action. The media picked up the story, and suddenly, Ryan's carefully crafted image began to crumble in front of everyone. Friends who had doubted me apologized, and strangers reached out with messages of support. The other woman, once so confident, now found herself isolated and exposed. She disappeared from social circles and social media alike. For me, it wasn't just about winning the case, it was about reclaiming my dignity and my life. I took back the apartment, the belongings, and even the engagement ring, a symbol that no longer held power over me. More importantly, I took back my voice. I started sharing my story publicly, helping others who had been betrayed or hurt in similar ways. The pain of that day at the altar was still there, but it no longer controlled me. I had turned my darkest moment into a new beginning. With the past finally behind me, I took a deep breath and looked forward. The woman who once stood at the altar, betrayed and broken, was now standing tall and free. Rebuilding my life wasn't easy, but every step was worth it. I moved into a new place filled with light and hope. I surrounded myself with people who truly loved and supported me, friends who lifted me up, and family who never stopped believing in me. I started new projects and chased dreams I had put aside for too long. For the first time in years, I felt alive and in control. Love? That chapter was still closed, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I knew my worth, and I knew that true love would come, one that would never make me feel less than I am. Looking back, I realized that day of the altar was not the end, but a painful beginning. A beginning that forced me to find my strength, my voice, and my courage. I took back everything that was mine, not just possessions, but my dignity, my happiness, and my future. And now I'm ready for whatever comes next, because I am no longer just a bride who was left at the altar. I am a woman who reclaimed her life,